The perfect sleep score has been plugged as a way of reducing the rate of aging, but there is a negative aspect to this which has not been mentioned before. So in this video, I'm going to explain why the quest for the perfect 100 sleep score might not be the anti-aging miracle that many are claiming. Now, I looked into the content released by longevity experts in how they obtained perfect sleep scores, and these perfect sleep scores, which they claim contribute towards reversing the rate of aging or even reversing their aging. Then after that, collecting all the research and everything, I conducted an experiment based upon these recommendations, and I did succeed in hitting the magic 100 perfect sleep score, but it came at a price. Everything comes at a price. Now, the initial problem is that any periods of restlessness, for example, getting up to pee during the night or moving around in your sleep, it knocks points off. It puts you down as being restless so many times, and of course all this reduces the score. Now, to get the perfect sleep score myself, I was going to need a bit of help, obviously, because I tend to move around a lot during my sleep, and because I tend to stay well hydrated for excellent joint health, I usually get up to pee one time per night in the middle of the night. Now, when it comes to my normal sleep scores, they're usually between 80 and 85. Now, maybe once a week I might get up to 90, or I can even drop down into the 70s, on the odd night. But my energy and the way I feel are more than adequate. But there's always room for improvement, I thought. And there's all this hype about how it reverses aging. So I thought I would look into this more. Now, based upon the recommendations from the experts, they seem to recommend higher doses of glycine or a supplement called GABA, which is gamma-aminobutyric acid, which acts on the GABA receptors in the brain in a similar way to that sedative sleeping pills such as Valium and Xanax. They react to the GABA receptors in the brain, causing the nice relaxed feeling that you get, which is why they work so well. But of course, never a good idea to take sleeping pills. I know this from experience. So because of this, I was wary of hitting GABA receptors, because these GABA receptors play an influence over drug and alcohol addiction. Also, reliance on sleeping pills for that matter. Drugs and alcohol act on GABA receptors to reduce feelings of anxiety and to induce a kind of relaxing, sedative kind of effect. And using a sedative, to me, seems to be unnatural and cheating in a way. Now, point out here that I'm already cheating. I'm using melatonin at 1 milligram per night, and I've been doing so for quite some time. This is because of a history of PTSD and sleep disorders in the past. Now, I usually use glycine along with arginine and methionine to enhance natural creatine production, and I've been doing this at 1,000 milligrams per day. Now, this did not seem to make any real difference to sleep. So first of all, I tried increasing the dose of glycine. First, I went up to 3,000 milligrams or 3 grams per night, and then increased that to 5,000 milligrams or 5 grams per night, and noticed no real difference in the actual sleep score results. So I tried introducing GABA. Now, at this point, I also decided to reduce the glycine back down to 1,000 milligrams per night, solely for enhancing natural creatine production. Now, I use GABA. I started off using GABA at 1,000 milligrams per night, and it made a difference. Not only did I fall asleep quicker, but my sleep scores increased to a nightly average persistent, of around 88, 89 kind of area, but a small but noticeable increase, but of course nowhere near the perfect 100. So I increased the dose first to 2,000 milligrams and then to 3,000 milligrams, and this increased my sleep scores to a persistent 95 plus, using a sedative but it left me with a groggy feeling upon waking, when you're kind of like that and you get up and you're all, you've got up out of bed but you're not fully awake. And this is different for me because usually I get out of bed, I wake up, I get out of bed immediately and I'm awake. And so I noticed this real difference here in the groggy effect, and this was taking 2 or 3 coffees to clear. I was kind of slower to fucking get my act together in the morning kind of thing. And this also gave me another negative side effect, which I'll get to in a minute. But in spite of my improved sleep scores, I was still keeping well hydrated for optimum joint health. And of course, doing this, it's only natural that you're going to get up maybe once in the night to pee because you're well hydrated. And for me, the toilet's only about 10 steps away from the bed. I sit on the toilet to pee to avoid waking myself up too much and stimulating my mind. And most of the time I go back to sleep pretty quickly after getting back into bed. So to get that perfect 100 sleep score, water intake was going to have to be reduced. Now, of course, this is not ideal, but reducing fluid intake was the only way to avoid getting up in the middle of the night to pee. If you stay well hydrated, it's kind of inevitable that you're going to be needing to get up to pee if you're sleeping, as I do, for 8-9 hours per night. Now, putting my body into partial dehydration, effectively what I did, helped a lot in getting the perfect sleep score. But of course, this is not ideal, nor is it really healthy. It's the same effect as drinking alcohol. The dark side to all of this is the secret to the perfect sleep score is taking sedatives and putting the body into a state of partial dehydration. But there's more, because it seems on further investigation that megadosing the sleep aid melatonin is also key to perfect sleep scores. This is the part all these longevity experts stay pretty quiet on. Their perfect sleep scores are not so perfect, and they are certainly not natural sleep. So it all sounds a bit sus to me. Now, one example is there's a supplement that has been pretty hyped up. It's got loads of good reviews for how effective it is. It's called TroZZZ from a company called Troscriptions. It's expensive at $34 for 16 days, making it an investment of nearly $70 a month for the quest to reverse aging with the perfect sleep. Now, looking into the ingredients on supplements like this one that these longevity experts are plugging, a single dose of TroZZZ contains 5 milligrams of melatonin, which is a huge dose just for one night. It's a sleep aid, and this is not natural sleep. I have a history of sleep disorders, and I'm using 1 milligram per night. This is 5 times the normal dose. They recommend, with melatonin, always use the lowest dose possible to get to sleep. No wonder this supplement has good reviews, and it's reputed to be really effective, and no wonder with such a high dose of melatonin included. So I added another 4 milligrams of melatonin to the partial dehydration and the 3,000 milligrams of GABA, and I hit the perfect magic sleep score of 100. However, came at a price. Starting with the introduction of GABA, and this got worse, noticeably worse as I increased the dose of GABA, was that I was starting to experience dizziness and vertigo during the day, during movements. Proprioception, motor control and balance were all negatively affected. This was particularly apparent when doing handstands, headstands, any movements which required rapid head movements, such as going from this, lying prone on the floor to getting up, or, you kind of get that. I was getting this kind of like this, not exactly losing my balance, but I noticed, you can notice this, and it was having an even getting up after sit-ups. You do sit-ups and get up really quickly, or push-ups and then get up really quickly. I was noticing, this dizzy sensation. So the price of the perfect sleep score was partial dehydration, which is never good because, this is going to cause you joint problems if you maintain this long term, and a significantly noticeable reduction in proprioceptive capacity and a noticeable downturn in physical performance. Hardly good indicators of longevity. It might have reduced my paper age in an epigenetic test, but long term it would have negative health consequences. This is the truth about these perfect sleep scores. Same with paper aging. It's unlikely that you're going to live longer because you've got a piece of paper. It's just a piece of paper. This is all an age test is. It's a piece of paper. It's nothing. You probably won't live an extra day longer than you were going to anyway without the fucking piece of paper. And these motherfuckers are charging hundreds of dollars for this. It's just a piece of paper. Partial dehydration is extremely detrimental to joint health and movement capacity. This could be why most longevity experts seem a little stiff during movements. Their quest to remain in perfect sleep for a good score on a test to perceive an age on a piece of paper, just a piece of paper, nothing more. And the other downside is the dependence that you will build up to using sedatives to induce sleep and to stay asleep and to not move as much during your sleep. It's like fucking taking drugs or fucking alcohol, in effect. It's bollocks. Now, on quitting this regime, because for me, a perfect sleep score combined with a reduced physical performance and proprioceptive capacity, I'd rather have a sleep score of around 80, 85 and feel 100% and have great energy and fluid joints and great movements and everything and better physical performance than the fucking sleep score of 100. Now, on quitting this regime, after 2 to 3 days of not using GABA and reducing the melatonin back down to 1 milligram per night, the dizziness and impaired motor control and proprioceptive capacity corrected itself. I actually, even though I was tired as fuck and not sleeping properly, quitting sedatives has this effect. It ruins your fucking ability to naturally get to sleep. My physical performance noticeably improved. Even my sleep, however, it's taken 3 weeks to recover my natural sleep patterns, more than 3 weeks in fact. Taking sedatives completely ruined my circadian rhythm. For the first week after cutting out these longevity sleep score sedatives, most nights with disturbed sleep and terrible sleep scores of under 40, even in the 20s on some night. No wonder because I developed a need for sedatives. During the time that it took me, the few weeks that I'd conducted this experiment over, trying to get to this 100 perfect sleep score, I effectively built up a sedative habit. Just because it wasn't Valium, Xanax, diazepam or any of the regular offenders or sleeping pills, and it's supposedly natural supplement, makes no fucking difference. It's still sleep aids, and I was still taking sedatives. You've got to see this for what it really is. Now, this is the secret. It's their secret to the perfect sleep scores that they're getting and showing you on their channels. Dehydration and sedatives. Let that one sink in. I do not recommend melatonin, even though I take melatonin. Here, I'm going to say this. Please listen to what I'm saying here. I do not recommend melatonin unless you have a sleep disorder. Unless you've had disturbed sleep for a significant period of time. If you can fall asleep naturally without using any sleep aid, then fucking do so. Do not use any sleep aid like melatonin or GABA. You will just disrupt your natural sleep patterns in the long term. I only use melatonin as a sleep aid after a history of PTSD and sleep disorders, and this took me a couple of years to fix. I do not endorse or recommend the use of sleep aids unless it's absolutely necessary. on that note, signing out and catch you all soon.